Excellent, we're live. Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We're here. There's myself, Carl Tidderington, Director of Social Medias for Inklings Publishing, and we have the CEO of Inklings Publishing, Fern Brady, as well with us, and we have the wonderful, magnificent Belinda Everette, who is the author of Summer Vacation, and she's very kindly joined us today.
Inklings Publishing.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to mute my YouTube again. That happens. Yeah, so Belinda very kindly said she'd join us today for a couple of interviews about her latest book, Summer Vacation, and we're really pleased to have you here today. So, yeah, great to see you.
Good to see you, and it's great to be here. I'm glad to talk to you both about summer vacation and maybe a little bit about my process and anything else you might want to ask me.
Brilliant. Yeah, we're very excited to hear how it works, because I'm sure it varies, you know, between authors in terms of how authors write. So it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on that. So let's kick off, and what inspired you to write Summer Vacation to start off with?
I was taking a writing course at Rice University last fall, and one of the assignments, one of the exercises was to write a story, and in that story the idea for Summer Vacation came about, and it was basically, how do you tell someone who's never lived in Texas the value of the Juneteenth holiday? And to that end, the story centers around Juneteenth. And then how would you tell a child? And from those two ideas, talking to a child and then explaining the holiday that basically abolishes slavery, how do you deliver that message in a way that's not too harsh, but at the same time does not diminish the importance of the holiday?
Very cool. And let me
So
ask
that's
you
how
this.
the idea.
You know, some people may not be familiar with Juneteenth because, you know, sadly, as we know, it is not a particularly well-known holiday, and the historical importance of that one is not well known. I mean, I think there's a lot of work to be done in making it more known to people. So, you know, take a few minutes and kind of give us a little bit of the background of the holiday. What is its significance for those who may not be aware of it?
Well, the holiday, the actual date is June 19th, and from that date, the name Juneteenth was evolved. And basically, as we all know, slavery was abolished in this country in 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation, which was actually given in September but made effective January 1st. In the state of Texas, however, that did not necessarily happen. And in fact, slavery was upheld for an additional 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. So in essence, Juneteenth or June 19th is the actual day that slavery ended in the state of Texas. And what's significant about that, I guess, for the rest of the country is that, you know, Texas is one of the largest states in the Union, and how goes Texas goes, you know, a lot of other neighboring states. So I know that Juneteenth is acknowledged in Louisiana, it's acknowledged in Oklahoma, but the significance of it, I'm not sure, you know, is known beyond the border states, I would say, because our family is from Chicago, and beyond, you know, had I not moved to Texas, I don't know that I would know what that holiday was or the significance of it. So the holiday was celebrated, you know, among the Black community and among minority communities, but it wasn't until the 70s and 80s that the holiday there was a movement to make the holiday a national holiday and a state holiday. George H.W. Bush, I guess that's his initial, but he was in office when it became a state holiday, and there was a movement and a bill produced to make it a federal holiday, but it didn't get passed. but it is a state holiday in the state of Texas.
Very cool. So, so you wanted to kind of share a little bit of this history, and you wanted to do so for kids. So, I mean, basically, your books are children's books.
Yes. I wanted to talk about that holiday. Well, as you know, the summer vacation is the first book in a book series, and it's the first of 5 books. But the entire series is based on historical events, current events, social norms, but it's a vehicle to educate our youth as well as entertain them. And when I wanted to communicate the importance of the holiday of Juneteenth, I also found that there weren't a lot of people that really understood the significance of some of the traditions. For example, there's a tradition that you have red pop or you have some red soda. That's part of the Juneteenth celebration. So of the meal that you share, there should be red velvet cake, there should be red soda, there should be barbecue. But not just because those things are delicious and everybody likes them, but there was some historical relevance to that. And the most significant one was that these were foods that the slaves were not allowed to eat. So they had to prepare them, they had to serve them, but they weren't not allowed to eat them. So when they found that slavery was abolished, they celebrated, and those were the foods that were, I guess, foremost on the menu.
And in the book, I know, and I don't want to give a lot of things away from the book, but in the book, you do mention that there were places where white people were, celebrating Juneteenth, interestingly, while excluding, African Americans, which I found very intriguing that, they would be celebrating a holiday about freedom for, African Americans and civil liberties, and yet they were excluding blacks from participating. So, talk to us a little bit about that kind of, did you find that out, as you were researching the book, or, how did that come about?
It's an interesting story behind that little addition to the story. But as I was researching the story and just basically gathering information from people, what's your Juneteenth experience? And I talked to people of all races. I just didn't, talk to blacks to say, how do you celebrate Juneteenth? But I wanted to talk to Texans as a whole. And the little story, while it is a work of fiction, some of it was inspired. One of the stories that was told was of a person who celebrated Juneteenth every year as a child. And they always celebrated Juneteenth at their country club here in Houston. And this country club would have a big party, and they would have a carnival and Ferris wheels and just a huge celebration. And as a child, they just knew it was the carnival day. When they got old enough to question, well, why are we having this party? He was told it's Juneteenth. And the irony was, or so I was told, was that he looked around and all the people that worked at the country club were either Hispanic American or African American, and the people that were enjoying the celebration were the white members. And at that time in Houston's history, it was a restricted club, meaning that minorities weren't allowed. I thought the irony was that here was a child. Once again, we all start out the same with the same questions, wondering about right, wrong, injustice, what's good, what's bad. But a child noticed that we're celebrating Juneteenth, which is freedom from slavery, and they're working to serve us, and they can't be a member of this club. So I thought that was relevant just to show not just the children, but maybe the parents who read the story or heard the story of how far we've come. I don't think there are that many restricted clubs, and if there are, we don't know about them. They don't advertise. So we have come very, very far but there's still a lot of work to do. But I also think that you have to understand where you've been to know how far you've come. Again, that's why I tailored my stories to children. Well, not just to children, but to middle school age children from ages 9 to 13. That's where they're making their ideas and forming their personalities. And to understand your history is very, very important.
So,
I think
oh, Carl,
sorry.
jump in.
I think that's a great point. I mean, it really is. I mean, I'm a history teacher, and I think it's always important for us to know where we've come from in order to see where how far we've got. I think that's a great point, and I find it really interesting the idea of the children's point of view, because I find so often children really ask the questions that a lot of adults almost are afraid to ask. They don't want to ask those questions because they don't want to uncover that sort of the truth behind it, and yet children so often will ask those sort of difficult questions almost innocently. And I think it's a great, the story you were just mentioning about the people at the country club. I think it's great that those children were able to question, well, hang on, it doesn't seem right if we're celebrating this for them and they're not celebrating it with us, and so I think that's a really great point to your story. And so yeah, I was curious, how long did it take you to write this, or to research and to write this?
It took a few months, because as I got into the history behind the story, I also wanted to look at what other information was out there, what was available in terms of books for schools, books for students, and there weren't many. In fact, I only found 2 other books, and my resources were the university library at Rice, and then of course whatever I could Google or find through the internet or on Amazon. And there weren't many, but they all told a similar story, that it was the end of slavery in Texas. And I just kind of pieced together the history of the foods and the celebration, and what I found in terms of historical data was not like all in one place. The information about how the Union Army had to come up through Galveston to actually bring and enforce the law of the land, which was that slavery was abolished, because prior to that, anyone that came into Texas to bring the news, if you will, they were killed. So there was some historical data that supported that, but there really was no clear-cut, this is why it took 2.5 years for Texas to abide by the law. But there were the facts that said, this is what happened up until this point. And then General Granger and the Union Army came, I guess, around the state of Texas and up through Galveston to bring the news. So gathering all of that information was, it took about a couple of months. And then, of course, the writing process of writing, submitting it to your editor, and writing it and rewriting it, and just making sure the message was right, but not only the message was right, but that it might answer questions, and it would also serve it up in a way that wasn't too harsh. That was really important to me. Slavery was harsh. It was nothing fun, easy, or soft about it. But I think a child's mind can only process so much, and at least they should only process so much difficulty and some of life's ugly side. So I just wanted to give that information to them in a way that they could process it, understand what it was, and then see that there was something beyond that. Just not leave them there in slavery, and here's something beyond the slavery, what's happened since then.
Yeah, and I just to mention, what you're saying about Texas, how come it took Texas so long? I think it's because Texas as a state has a strong will you know, if you will. I mean, we're very strong-willed, Texans are, and we have a tendency to sort of do our own thing. You know, we see ourselves as our own country even. You know, I think, you know, a lot of people still remember, yes, Texas used to be a country. So I think that a lot of that may have played into it as well, you know, that people just, they're like, well, nobody needs to come and tell Texans what to do, you know, kind of thing. And we do
Yeah.
still kind of have a lot of that attitude in Texas, you know. It's quite
Hmm.
interesting when you look at, even nowadays, the things going on, you know, our relationship with the federal government, you know.
Hmm.
It's an interesting relationship. I was going to ask you about the characters because, you know, I know that authors, you know, get their inspiration for their characters. Um, and it's interesting always to ask, you know, where did you get your inspiration for these characters?
Well, Mackenzie and Kristen are actually two very real young ladies. Mackenzie is my granddaughter, and Kristen is her very best friend. That I've watched them grow up together from the second grade, and for a while I was their Girl Scout troop leader. And so, you know, I have always, from my teenage days when I babysat, I've always loved interacting with children. Children have no filters. That's one of my, I think, one of their best qualities. As Carl said, they don't figure out how to present information. They just say it. They're not trying to sugarcoat it. They have no guile. They just talk. And I really do value that because they're just honest. And Mackenzie and Kristen, just observing them and their friends, and there's such a beauty and just a beauty in their truths, I guess I should say. And I love talking to them because they're just trying to gather information. They're trying to figure things out. And if you can help them along that way, you know, that's a really important job. And it's a privilege to be able to talk to a child and to answer questions for them. So just talking with them, hanging out with them, whether it's taking them to, you know, the rodeo or taking them to the movies and just sitting around talking to them, watching a movie with them, it's just a job I really enjoy. They were the motivation behind the story. But I tried to write the book as if I was explaining it to them.
So just kind of going back to your own writing process, which I think Carl kind of asked a little bit about, um, Carl has a book about ghosts, the ghost of the Bay House. And I know
Um,
we had some discussions on ghosts, right?
yes,
So,
yes.
now you are a published author. How do you feel about that? I mean, did you ever see yourself here? And, how does this feel for you as a first-time author?
It's I feel, I guess the biggest emotion I have behind, other than joy, because I love to write, I've always loved the written word. I feel the responsibility, and I don't know if that's an emotion or a duty, a task. I feel responsible to give truth in the things that I write. So research is really important, and my writing process is, I think a lot of writers will tell you the most important thing to do is to just get it down, to get it on paper. So I get an idea down, and from that idea, I might write an outline. And then from the outline, I start research. And from the research, I write. So the research allows me to form opinions, allows me to come to conclusions, and with that, I can come up with a story.
Very cool. So this is going to be a series.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about, what are some of the upcoming topics that you see, coming into this series, just little hints and
Well, Book two, which is already completed, will be out in April. And book two is probably, of the 5 books, it will be the most controversial because it takes on the subject of the N-word and how today's artists, the music genres have tried to minimize the impact of the word or to give it dual purpose, and there's been no real work done as to, well, this is why it's done and this is why we say this is why it shouldn't be a thing. So I had an idea of, well, let's research that. Let's see why we're saying that. What does it really mean? And so book two is going to take on the use of the N-word in today's culture and our youth and their approach to understanding the significance of that word. Book 3 and 5 are basically talking about historical things that have happened in the United States, well, United States history, I guess you have to say, and things that really aren't covered, that I have not seen covered with any prevalence. I just don't hear people talking about it, and it's a focus on the Harlem Renaissance, talking about the writers, the thinkers, the artists of that time, which was from the Civil War, World War I, right up into a little bit after the Great Depression to about 1934. And it's where, not that far after slavery, where African Americans were migrating from the South to the North, where there was work, and they were educated, and they decided to congregate and come together to have a community. And there was, the Harlem Renaissance was born. Zora Neale Hurston, Duke Ellington, W.E.B. Du Bois. They were all part of the Harlem Renaissance, and I don't see that taught anywhere in our elementary schools. So that's a few things that I'm writing about.
That's great. I mean, as I guess a student of history anyway, all history sort of fascinates me, but it's great that you've been able to start, picking up parts of history that perhaps aren't as well known as other parts, and really bring them to the forefront, particularly for children who, I think, I think it's important for them to have an understanding so that they can, base their opinions and their thoughts on actual events rather than perhaps what's been passed down from their parents or their grandparents or whoever it might be that influences them. I was just wondering, as you were telling us about this, have you got any sort of kind of background in history yourself? I mean, is that what your major's in, or tell us a little bit about I guess your background with history.
My background with history is none. I've actually, my background is a bit diverse. When I was in school, I was a communications major, journalism major, and but right out of school, I knew that I just couldn't sit around and write a book and eat at the same time. So I got a job, and one of the things that, of course, as a writer is how to type. And after taking typing classes and word processing classes, I got a job at a financial institution back in the 80s, and that evolved into a 26-year career in financial services. I've worked for Citibank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and that's what I was doing up until 2007, and a life event happened, and I had to stop working. So I said, let's go back, let's make some lemonade out of those lemons, and I decided to pursue writing, and I took some courses at Rice and found Fern, and a writer was born.
Fantastic. So history for you is more sort of like a hobby or sort of just an interest?
It's an interest because I too am fascinated with the things that have happened, which the things that people have accomplished and what's out there, and you don't know. You just don't know because no one's really telling that story. And I think it's fascinating. And I think that there are stories that just need to be told. They need to be read. They need to be understood and learned from.
Definitely. Well, that's fantastic. So now we had the was it we had our online release party, and you were at an event just the other weekend. Am I right in thinking, or maybe I'm now thinking it's a month ago? But was that your first event? And if so, how was that sort of experience for you, being an author and actually meeting people who wanted to read your book? How was that for you?
It was an amazing experience. It was my first book signing or book launch. It was the launch of Summer Vacation, and I was totally surprised at the amount of people that came out and supported me, and the people that, some folks came in off the street and bought books and were happy. And I think the thing that surprised me most was my assistant, my administrative assistant, who was my assistant for 7 years. I hadn't talked to her in, I know, 10 years, and we kind of lost track of each other. And she saw, I guess, on Facebook that there was a book signing, and she showed up, and that just made my day. And she, of course, purchased some books for her family. But it was really good to see that people liked the story. They liked the book. They were really, really excited about the story and the book, and they were, happy for me. That really, really was comforting, and I was so very appreciative of that.
That's great. I can remember the first time I was at a book show selling my books, and the fact that people are actually interested in buying my book was just, I don't know, it was mind blowing. I'm still not quite sure that it's true. I'm waiting to wake up at some point. So that's great, and we're really pleased.
You feel like it's your baby, and you put it out there, and you just hope somebody says, "Oh, that baby's cute," or something.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I almost feel like there's a vulnerability in the sense that you're pretty much you've kind of opened yourself up, and you create something, and now you're really giving it out to the public and saying, okay, what do you think of it? And I don't know, for me that's quite scary. I mean, how's that for you? Is that something that you don't mind, or?
I had the night before, a couple of days before, Fern can tell you, I had so many anxiety attacks over that book. I was like, they're going to hate it. No one's going to buy this book. No one's going to want to read this. They're going to say, what, Summer Vacation? Well, who cares? And so, yeah, I had all those thoughts. And my dad's twin sister, who is 79 years old, actually got on a plane from Phoenix, Arizona for my book launch. My cousin from Chicago came in, and so I felt an enormous responsibility to have a good product out there because people were invested in my success. So yeah, I was extremely vulnerable and nervous and anxious.
So
I still am.
Well, I was going to ask. I mean, so does that kind of lessen as you going into book 2? Are you a little more comfortable? You're like, okay, I'm hitting my stride, or are you still feeling that anxiety? How does it feel?
Right now, it's not a hit. I'm not hitting. I probably won't hit my stride until Disney calls. But no. But I think I'm always gonna be a little nervous because, as Carl said, you're opening yourself up. When you are working for someone, and that's their thing, that's their product, that's their whatever it is you're producing for them. And so you don't really, you can take ownership and take pride in the output that you produce, but it's not yours, it's theirs, and you just helping them with it. But when you write a book, that's you, that's 100% you. It's your mind, that's your thought, that's your skill set, and you're putting it out there and hoping that someone has an interest, and two, that they like it.
Are you worried about the topic of book 2?
Yes,
Or yeah.
a little bit, because there's just so many differing opinions on that. But I'm not as worried, I think, as I thought I would be, because I'm not necessarily taking a neutral position. I'm just using the facts. So, it's not an opinion. These are facts that I'm putting out there, and putting it, I hope that people can form their own opinions and come to their own conclusions. Because I think that's important. When you give people all of the information, not some of it, not a piece of it, not a little bit of it, but all of the information, they can make balanced decisions, they can make educated conclusions, and they can know what they're doing. You can't tell people part of a story and expect that they're going to give you a 100% correct answer or a 100% correct response, because they don't have all the facts. So all I'm trying to do is tell a story, and in that story, put some facts out there for you to consider. And I don't think that should threaten anyone, but everybody's got their own opinion, But that won't stop me. No. I don't think everybody wants to like everything that you do, but that's not going to happen.
And I think it's a very brave, but a really important kind of idea and task that you kind of set yourself there. I was just thinking earlier when you were talking about book 2, and I thought to myself, it is something that has been on my mind, for a few years, in the sense that so many kids in schools listen to a lot of rap music and R&B and all these different types of music forms, and yet so many times you hear that word used, and for me, and maybe this is my British background, I'm not accustomed really to hearing that word used a lot. It's something that's very much been, I think, almost eradicated. I'm sure it's not completely eradicated, but it has really been shown to be something that isn't good to use in England. But to come over here and just to see different attitudes to that, and I think it's going to be really interesting to read book 2, just to see what the facts are, and what the kind of whole situation is about, and then be able to kind of go from there. So I'd like to commend you, because I think you're doing a wonderful job, and I'm really looking forward to it myself.
Well, thank you. It's interesting that you say that, and what's happening over there in the UK. But when I did my research for this book, part of that was to I surveyed people, and I had 7 questions all around. What do you think when you hear that word? What do you think when someone says that word? What do you think when you hear someone called that word? And the different age groups, the responses were pretty much the same across the board for teenagers or preteens. The adult response was shocking, because there was a perception that is not necessarily accurate, that word has somehow lost or has dual definitions, and it doesn't. So I was pretty shocked, and you'll read more about that when you read the story, but the research was very, very enlightening.
And one of the things that I like about your books, and working with you is that you do a lot of research, and you put a lot of effort into making sure that these are verifiable facts. I mean, you can go and look things up in the dictionary and an encyclopedia, and you'll find these facts, and I think that is the power of books, being able,
Mhm.
like you said, to present people with some facts and then let them make up their mind. And I do think that, while yes, I agree that there is a definite stance, you take a stance in the book, but you do it in a way that allows people to think about things and make up their own mind. I mean, you don't really take a stand in the way of, like, saying, well, the other opinion is absolutely incorrect. You just say, this is our opinion and here's why. And you present both sides. So I think it's very intriguing.
And I think, I was sort of, listening and thinking how much research you must have done for this, and I'm sort of sat there myself going, I don't do nearly as much research as that for my books, even though I write historical crime fiction, and you put me to shame. But that's fine. That's fine. I mean, and it is great to hear, that you have such a, almost quite unique, almost a unique kind of style to how you go about writing your books. I have a different style. I'm sure Fern has a different style. I'm sure others like Meg that we've spoken to before, they have their own styles. So it's really great to hear that, and we really appreciate you sharing that with us. That's absolutely great.
Yeah.
Disney, if it's Disney, you should pick the phone up.
It's not Disney.
All right.
If it's Disney, you need to let them know to call me.
That's right.
I'm the one that's going to negotiate them. No, but I do. I love the process and seeing all the different authors' process, like you were talking about, Carl. I mean, everybody has their own process, which is beautiful, And I know in book 3, because that one's kind of starting to be in the works. You're exploring a little bit of your own personal history and ancestry.
Yes.
So why did you decide to go that route of exploring ancestry? I mean, why do people need to know their ancestry? I mean,
Well, I mean,
why should they care?
Why should they care? No. The book you're referencing is actually the 5th book in the series, Discovery. And I started that. I actually reordered the books because book 3 is almost done. But that's actually book 5, Discovery. And it started from actually 2 premises. And one is the whole discovering of America. And I always, kind of chuckle at that statement because I don't know how you can discover something that people already are there. So, from that premise, you discover something, yeah, it's new to you, but the people that live there, well, I'm here. And in doing that, because I am biracial and my mother and my maternal side of the family, that led me to actually want to research our history. And in doing so, learned that I am a descendant of Chief John Ross, who was the leader of the Cherokee Nation, who led the entire nation from the Georgia and Florida lands to what is now the Oklahoma territories and what is known as the historical Trail of Tears. And that's when they were forced off their land and pushed west. And understanding that, wanting to see, okay, well, how did that happen and how did that affect? I mean, there weren't just adults that they relocated. There were kids there. There were babies. There were just whole generations of people that were, removed from their lands and their homes. And I wanted to understand that story, but again, understand it in a way that a child could learn from that and not want to repeat it, not want to repeat those behaviors and understand what really happened. You know, someone didn't just get in a boat and come over here and say, there's no one here and we're going to make this a great country and it's ours now. That's not what happened. So there's a vein of truth. There's another story to be told. And basically, that's what I'm trying to do. Tell the other side.
Fantastic. So you've got your 5 stories planned out, I guess, in your series. Where do you see yourself going after that? Do you think you're going to continue another series, perhaps, or write something else, or where do you see yourself going?
Well, after actually, I'm multitasking in my writing. I'm in the middle of my memoir, and it's my faith journey, if you will. My last, I guess, 25 years friendship that I've had with my pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, and that story is basically one of hope and renewal, and hopefully it will allow anyone who reads it the ability to see the real Jeremiah Wright and the impact that he's had on my family, which is the impact that he's had on thousands of people in his congregation in the city and across the country and in the world. So again, it's another side of the story, and I think that that's supposed to be launched, I believe, in the 4th quarter of this year, maybe 1st quarter next year. But after that, who knows? I want to see what happens after that gets out there. Fern, I'm sure, has some ideas.
Well, I think it's very interesting. You know, I was not really that aware of Reverend Wright, you know, until I met you. You know, give us a little bit of background on who he is and his church, and how you know, just without, you know, obviously telling us the book, you know, give us a little bit of, like, you know, how you found them, and the impact, you know, that he's had.
Okay. Well, while I lived in Chicago before I moved to Houston 15 years ago, and I was, you know, still, as we all are, you know, trying to stay right and be right on my faith walk, and had been baptized and raised a Catholic. Always had serious questions and concerns about the whole practices of the Catholic Church, and was looking for more information, more substance, and was actually found this church through my daughter. And she had gone to some friend's house, and they took her to church with them. And she came home, and she was 15 years old, and raved about a church. And it wasn't the choir, it was the pastor. So I had to go and see for myself what type of church and what type of pastor could influence a 15-year-old that really wanted to go to that church. And at the time, my daughter was in Catholic school. She went to Mass every day, and just like her mother and my mother, you know, it's just our history. So she went to another faith and was really touched. And for a teenager, that's not an easy thing. So after visiting the church, I saw, you know, why she was touched, because the message, the warmth, the spirit was there, and it was a remarkable experience. And we actually joined that church over time, and I became a member, and through that membership, I, you know, developed a friendship with the pastor. And when I had to, I accepted a position with Wells Fargo in 2000 and had to relocate to Houston. And even though I left Chicago, I was still able to, video stream the church on Sundays and stay in contact. And I looked up one day, and our letter writing back and forth and his advising me had just evolved into almost a 20-year box of letters. And I said, look at all the lessons that are in this. Look at all the support and love and encouragement and, just the education. And from that, I came up with an idea that I really, really wanted him to get a better, I guess, better press than what he was getting. At the time of the presidential campaign of Barack Obama in '08, he was misrepresented in the press, and the church was misrepresented, but he was actually demonized in the press. And so everything that he had done, from building churches and hospitals in Ghana to senior citizen homes and schools in Chicago, all of that was overlooked. And a soundbite from a sermon then became, the definition of who he was as a pastor and what he taught. And this man he's brilliant. He's a doctorate in theology and music. And it's a travesty what has happened to him. So I looked at, how he's pastored to me, and he has 23 ministries in that church, and how he's supported anybody who knocked on his door and said, well, at least let me tell my story. Let me raise my hand and say, this is not true, and here's why. And that's why the memoir started.
Cool. That sounds great. I think that's going to be a very exciting read when that comes out. I just wish I was quick at reading so I could probably get through it quite quickly. It sounds like it's going to be a mammoth task for me, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of people out there who will read that and thoroughly enjoy it and get through it far quicker than I will. So yeah, we can look forward to that. And you said that was possibly towards the end of this year, maybe early next year, so we can put that in our calendar.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Question. Sorry, I was so busy listening. I didn't actually think of any other questions. Fern, have you got anything? Just as we kind of draw close to the end.
Well, I think it's always fascinating, the reasons why people decide to write memoirs, because, when you think of a memoir, right, I always think of like really famous people write memoirs because they did something amazingly special, and you don't think of the ordinary person, Belinda's certainly not ordinary. She's a very extraordinary person. But I mean, someone, let's say, the uncelebrity person, writing memoirs, you don't normally think of that, and yet now that I've been working with a lot of authors, I see so many powerful stories, of people's journeys through life and the lessons and the people that touched them, that helped them, like Dr. Wright. And it's just amazing to me that you can really connect with all these seemingly ordinary people that have had extraordinary lives, and because I will confess, I was not a memoir reader. I was like, oh, memoirs, whatever, I mean, I read them for my history classes, and but that was it, But now that I'm working with authors who are doing memoirs, it's like amazing to me the humanness across the board, and I think that that's something that Belinda, really bring in all of your writing, for the children's writing and your memoir. I mean, the fact that outside of our differences, essentially, we're all the same. We're all human beings, and we share the same, basic qualities. And I think that's a very, wonderful thing that you bring to your writing. And that wasn't really a question, but, but it sort of came out.
say that because when you look at it, we all want the same things: safety, security. We want to, make a decent living and have a relatively comfortable existence. And nobody wants to grow up in this world and become a drug addict or a thief or, yeah, when I grow up, uh, I want to be Bernie Madoff. No, we all grow up and we start out the same. And I think that's why I like children so much, because at that point, they are all the same. You have to teach hatred. You have to teach distrust. You really have to really go out of your way to influence people or influence anything in a negative way. So hopefully, with my writing, you get a glimpse that we are pretty much all the same. All the same. We all have our uniqueness, but we all the same. Everybody's blood is red.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's fantastic, and so just as we kind of come to a close for this first hour, if people want to know more about you and your books, where can they look? Have you got a Facebook page? Are you on Twitter? Where can they?
I have a Facebook page, and it's Belinda Everette, and I also have a website it was under construction, but it's just a basic website. You can leave comments there. You can take a look at it. It's BelindaEveretteAuthor.com, and if you take a look there and leave me some information, I'll get back with you. If you want me to come talk to your book club, your school, or a public library, I'll be more than happy to. And just give me a shout, and I will get with you.
Fantastic. And can I just say, if anybody from the Disney Corporation is watching, please contact Fern Brady at inklings.publishing@gmail.com, and she will be able to set you up with Belinda for perhaps many
a humongous fee.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's okay. But no, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on, Belinda. For this hour. We're very much looking forward to speaking to you again later on this evening. Thank you to everybody who's watched or will watch in the future this video. If you have any questions, check Belinda out on Facebook. If you want to get in contact with her through Inklings, you're more than welcome to do that as well. We're always happy to take questions, comments, and inquiries.
And I'd like to just say real quick, obviously her books are on Amazon.com, but you can also buy sets of these books on Inklings' website. All of the children's books that are produced by Inklings' Children Division have educator materials. They have discussion questions, writing extensions, and of course the obligatory standardized test, multiple choice questions, and just a whole lot of great resources for educators and for parents, because I know teachers always want parents to do some reading with their kids, and parents are like, well, what do I ask, right? So you don't have to worry about that. With our books, you just pick them up and everything's there for you at the back of the book. And we do have sets, so if you're a teacher or you're a homeschooler parent, and you want a small group set or you want a whole class set, we have sets that you can order off of our website, and if you need larger than what we have available, you can just contact us and we can make that happen.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Fern. And if you have questions that you want us to ask Belinda later on at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, please email them to inklingspublishing@gmail.com. That is in the description below. And we'd just like to thank you all for watching, listening. And thank you to Belinda for being here with us today, and thank you to Fern for gracing us with your presence again. It's always good having you with us. Saves me a lot of work, but no, that's not.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
really great talking to you both, and I really enjoyed this. You made it easy.
We try hard to do that, to be fair, and one of the great things I think, you know, that many people, I guess, that work within Inklings say is that it is such a comfortable environment. It's friendly. It's like a family, and so, you know, it's great to be able to you know, chat with all of our different authors, and we'll have illustrators on at some point, and we'll have, you know, who knows what we'll have on, maybe even Disney themselves. But
Never know.
so, but yeah, thank you ever so much, and we'll be speaking to you a little bit later on. And
Okay.
from all of us, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.